My name is James Harper, and I'm 28 years old. I've always had a strange fascination with antiques and forgotten items, the kind that hold stories and histories that most people overlook. Living in New York City, it's easy to get lost in the noise and bustle of the streets. But I've always found solace in places that are quiet, tucked away, and untouched by time. That's how I came across the shop. One cloudy afternoon, while walking through the older part of the city, I spotted a tiny shop tucked between two towering buildings. It wasn't the kind of place you'd notice unless you were looking for it. The faded sign above the door read Bishop's Curiosities in old peeling letters. The windows were dirty, and the interior was barely visible from the outside, but there was something about it that drew me in. Maybe it was the promise of finding something rare, something different from the usual antiques you see in larger shops. Maybe it was the feeling that something ancient and mysterious awaited inside. I pushed the door open and was greeted by a faint bell above my head. The air inside was thick with the scent of old wood, dust, and something else I couldn't quite place. The dim light from a single flickering bulb illuminated the cluttered shelves that lined the walls. Old clocks, tarnished silverware, leather-bound books, and strange little trinkets filled the space. Everything had a weathered charm to it, like it had been waiting for someone like me to come and give it new life. As I wandered deeper into the shop, I let my fingers trace the edges of various items, half listening to the creaks of the floor beneath my feet. That's when I saw it. At the far end of the shop, propped up against a stack of dusty crates, stood a large oil painting. It was hard to miss. The frame was intricate, gold, and chipped in places, but still commanding. Something about it felt different from the other antiques in the shop, as though it were calling to me. I walked closer, my heart quickening with a strange sense of excitement mixed with unease. The painting was large, maybe 4 feet by 5, and it depicted a sprawling, desolate landscape. In the center of the canvas stood a crumbling mansion perched atop a hill. The house was dilapidated, its windows shattered, the roof caved in, and the walls covered in creeping ivy. The sky above it was thick with storm clouds, dark and swirling as though something was stirring within them. The ground around the house was barren, with twisted, leafless trees growing out of the earth, their branches contorted like skeletal arms reaching up to the sky. I couldn't look away. The more I stared at the painting, the more I felt as if the scene was alive in some way, like it was trying to pull me in. The shadows in the trees were unnaturally deep, and a light in the painting flickered strangely, as though it couldn't decide whether it was day or night. The mansion itself seemed to loom closer, the details too vivid, too precise, like the house in the painting was reaching out toward me. I took a few more steps closer, almost drawn to it. I could feel a chill in the air, though the shop itself was warm, and the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Something wasn't right about this painting. But what? I had no idea. I had seen my share of strange and eerie art before, but nothing quite like this. This one felt different. It wasn't just the sinister landscape. It was as if the painting held a secret, a history it wanted to reveal, something just out of reach. And it was pulling me in, urging me to uncover it. I ran my fingers along the edge of the frame, the cold wood sending a shiver up my spine. "Careful, young man," a voice croaked from behind me, breaking my trance. I turned to see the shopkeeper, an elderly woman with silver hair tied in a loose bun, her face wrinkled with age. She wore a dark shawl, and her eyes, though tired, had a sharpness to them that I couldn't quite place. She looked at the painting with an almost pained expression, and for a moment, I thought I saw something flicker in her eyes, something dark. "That painting. It's not for sale," she said, her voice low and hesitant. I raised an eyebrow. "Why not?" The woman sighed, her gaze lingering on the painting as if she were seeing something in it that I couldn't. "It's cursed," she muttered. "It has a dark history. People who've owned it have met with misfortune, and some of them vanished." I couldn't help but chuckle nervously, dismissing her words. A cursed painting. Sounds like an old superstition. Her eyes locked with mine, and for a moment, I felt an uncomfortable silence settle between us. She didn't speak, but her expression seemed to warn me that this wasn't something to take lightly. Finally, she spoke again, her voice soft but firm. "I'm just telling you. You're better off without it." I didn't know what it was, but I felt an odd mix of skepticism and curiosity. There was something about the way she spoke, the way she looked at the painting, that made me feel as though she was hiding something. The painting was mesmerizing, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed to take it with me. "How much?" I asked, cutting through the tension. The shopkeeper hesitated for a long time before giving me a price, far lower than I expected. Something in my gut told me I shouldn't be so eager to buy it, but the temptation was too great. "I'll take it," I said. As I handed her the money and took the painting, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was making a mistake. But it was too late now. The painting was mine. Little did I know, it was the beginning of something I would never be able to undo. After I left the shop with the painting under my arm, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that had settled over me. The air seemed thicker as I walked back to my apartment in downtown New York, the bustling city around me feeling distant and muffled. I kept glancing at the painting as I carried it. The dark sky and twisted trees still haunting my thoughts. The shopkeeper's warning echoed in my mind, but I quickly dismissed it. It was just superstition, wasn't it? Once home, I placed the painting in my living room, leaning it against the wall. I stepped back, admiring it, but there was something unsettling about its presence. The shadows in the painting seemed too deep, too alive. It wasn't just the eerie trees or the looming mansion. It felt as if the painting was observing me, almost as though it were waiting for something. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, the image of the mansion would fill my mind. It was like the painting had invaded my dreams, its oppressive darkness pressing in from all sides. I woke up multiple times, feeling cold sweats on my skin, the weight of the painting's presence lingering in the air. The next day, I decided to move the painting, hoping a change in position might ease my discomfort. But no matter where I put it, the unsettling feeling persisted. I tried to ignore it, focusing on my art and daily routine, but the whispers started soon after. At first, I thought it was the wind, maybe the creaking of the apartment building. But as the days passed, the whispers grew louder. They came at night, soft at first, like distant murmurs just beyond my hearing. It was a low, almost rhythmic sound, undecipherable words that sent a chill down my spine. Sometimes, I would wake up to the sound of soft footsteps echoing through my apartment, though I was alone. One evening, while I sat in my studio working, I felt a sharp tug at my attention. I turned to look at the painting, my gaze instantly drawn to it. This time, it was different. The shadows in the trees seemed darker, more defined, and the house in the painting was closer, the details more vivid. It almost looked as though the house was leaning toward me, the broken windows now appearing like hollow eyes staring back. A wave of unease washed over me as I stood up, walking slowly toward the painting. The whispers grew louder, and I could almost make out words this time. It was as if the house itself was speaking, begging for attention, beckoning me closer. I reached out to touch the frame, but the moment my fingers brushed against the wood, a jolt of cold shot through my body, making me pull back in shock. The temperature in the room had dropped suddenly, and the air felt thick, heavy. I stared at the painting, my heart pounding in my chest. For the first time, I felt truly afraid. That night, as I lay in bed trying to shake off the feeling, I heard something else, something new, a faint knocking sound, coming from the direction of the painting. It wasn't loud, but it was persistent, like something, or someone, was trying to break through. I could feel my heartbeat quicken as I tried to ignore it, but the knocking continued, growing louder with each passing second. I got out of bed, my legs trembling. I stood in front of the painting, staring at it in disbelief. The knocks came again, louder this time, as if they were coming from inside the canvas itself. My breath quickened, and I reached for the painting, but my fingers hesitated just before touching the frame. That's when I saw it. In the bottom right corner of the painting, where the shadow of the house met the dark sky, a shape began to form. A figure, tall, shadowed, and vaguely human, slowly emerged from the darkness. It moved unnaturally, its form flickering like a bad signal on a television. My pulse raced as I stumbled back, the figure now unmistakably clear. It was a person. No, a creature, draped in shadows. Its eyes glowed with a sickly yellow light. And its face was twisted, as though it was in the throes of some unimaginable agony. I gasped and took a step back, but the creature's eyes followed my every movement. The whispers became clearer, more distinct now, and I could swear I heard my name among them. James, James. I stumbled backward, my heart pounding, as I stumbled over the chair behind me. The figure in the painting flickered again, and then it vanished, just like that. But the eerie feeling remained, as though the thing was still there, lurking just beneath the surface. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The room felt suffocating, the air thick with something oppressive and cold. I knew then that the painting was more than just a cursed object. It was a portal to something dark, something malevolent, and I had brought it into my home. I ran to the painting, trying to rip it from the wall, but the frame refused to budge. It felt as though the painting had grown roots, embedding itself deep into the plaster. The whispers grew louder, and the shadows in the painting seemed to move, swirling as though the figure was about to emerge again. I backed away slowly, panic rising in my chest. I had to get rid of it, but I knew deep down that it wasn't that easy. The painting wasn't something I could simply dispose of. It had already become a part of me, and I was beginning to realize that there was no escaping what I had brought into my life. I couldn't take it anymore. The whispers, the figure in the painting, the cold sweats that gripped me every time I closed my eyes. Everything had become unbearable. I had tried to move the painting, cover it, even throw it out, but no matter what I did, it always found its way back into my life. It was as if it were alive, a part of me now, and I couldn't escape it. One night, as the whispers returned, more frantic and urgent than before, I made up my mind. I would destroy the painting. It was the only way to end this torment. The moment I touched the frame, I felt a surge of cold so intense that it felt as though the air itself had frozen around me. The painting throbbed, pulsing with a dark energy that made my blood run cold. I could see the figure again, standing in the mansion's doorway, its glowing eyes locked on me. "James, you can't escape," the voice hissed, distorted and unnatural. My hand shook as I pulled a knife from the kitchen, the blade trembling in my grip. I stood in front of the painting, my pulse hammering in my ears. The figure in the painting shifted, its form moving toward me, but I was determined. I raised the knife, and with a single forceful strike, I slashed at the canvas. The moment the blade made contact, a deafening screech filled the air. The painting rippled like water, the surface twisting and contorting in agony. I recoiled, stumbling back as the room shook violently. The shadows within the painting seemed to writhe, growing darker, thicker. I could feel the temperature drop even further, and the walls seemed to pulse with the same unnatural energy emanating from the canvas. And then, as suddenly as it had started, everything stopped. The painting hung motionless, silent. The figure was gone. The whispers faded into nothing. I stood there, breathless, staring at the now empty canvas. It was over, or so I thought. But as I looked around the room, I noticed something unsettling. The shadows were still there, lingering, twisting in the corners. They were darker than before, more oppressive. The air felt charged, as if something were about to snap. When I glanced at the empty space where the painting had been, I froze. In the reflection of the window across from me, there was a shape. A figure, tall, cloaked in shadows, was standing behind me. It wasn't in the window alone. It was in the room with me. It was no longer just a painting. It was real, and it was waiting.